So week 16 is here, and if you made the championship, good luck to you. But here's a few sleepers at quarterback that you could possibly use if you're in a tough situation, a deep league or two quarterback leagues. The first guy's Mitchell Trubisky of the Chicago Bears. The Bears offense, it's played better since Trubisky got back into the starting lineup. And in 2 out of his 4 fantasy games since he came back is Trubisky. He's had 30 fantasy points twice. And last week versus Minnesota, it wasn't a great game for him. 200 yards and a passing touchdown and it though with 34 yards rushing. But this week, he's got a great matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars that give up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Trubisky here, I think he can make a few plays. He could get 2 or 3 touchdowns and possibly reach the 250-yard mark in this one. So definitely 2 quarterback leagues or a 17, 18 team league, whatever you're in. Trubisky, he could help you out with this good matchup this week as the first quarterback sleeper. The second one is Andy Dalton of the Dallas Cowboys. Dalton, he showed some flashes this season of fantasy relevancy, but he's a guy also in the deepest of leagues, 2 quarterback leagues you're going to use. And his last 4 out of 5 fantasy games, Dalton's gone over 20 fantasy points. And this week he's got a decent matchup versus the Philadelphia Eagles that give up the 14th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I think this game's going to be a shootout, but there's going to be a lot of useful players in this one. And Dalton, I could see him go for 250, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he'll turn it over as well, I believe, to 1 or 2 turnovers. But that's still a decent fantasy day, especially if you need a quarterback in a pinch here in your championship and the third and final quarterback. I would consider a sleeper this week's Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. Tua, he's had some flashes of good games over the last few weeks. In Week 13 versus Cincinnati, 21 fantasy points with 296 passing yards and a touchdown. Then Week 14 versus Kansas City, he went for 316 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and into 24 yards rushing and a touchdown. So that was his first 300-yard passing game, and he had 31 fantasy points in that one. And last week in Week 15 versus New England, a mediocre ball game, 145 passing yards, and into 9 rushing yards with 2 goal line rush touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. And this week he's got a good matchup versus the Las Vegas Raiders, which is a Saturday game that give up the 11th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. I think this game could be a mini shootout with 2 quarterbacks like Marcus Mariota and Tua Tagovailoa in this one. But I think Tua, he can help you, like I said, in deep leagues or 2 quarterback leagues. And that's a few quarterbacks I have as sleepers this week heading into Week 16.